Hello there. So today we would be looking at group by clause, which is generally used with the select statements. So as usual, the agenda for today would be that initially we would understand what is group by clause, and then there are several extensions to group by clause as you can use rollup, cube, grouping sets, grouping ID, and so on. And we would obviously see everything into the practicals, right? So very briefly, let us understand what is group by clause. So a group by clause is basically is used for grouping of rows into your query results. So whenever the query results are produced, if you want to group them in specific uh, way, that is with a specific column or a specific number of columns, then you can use this grouping of rows so that each row would be grouped in that whatever column you have specified. Group by clause are generally used with an aggregate function. So whenever in a query, if you want to use the aggregate functions like sum, average, count, to name some, if you want to use this with any other columns, right, then you will have to use this group by clause so that you are saying that okay, group the that is do this summation aggregation, right, depending upon the grouping of column has been specified. And this can also be basically used, there are some extensions to do those group by clauses like having rollup, cube, grouping sets, and grouping IDs, right? I just don't want to go into much theory of, what is rollup and cube. We would surely see everything into example so that you can identify, you can understand this more clearly. Okay. So as usual, yes, let us action, which is my favorite. Uh, so let me bring on my management studio and let me initially create the environment first. So I'm creating this database and then using that database and then I'm creating this employee table first and then I would show you and then I will tell you what is group by and what are the extensions. Okay, so my environment is ready and now you can see I have an employee table where there are certain columns as employee name, a department, a designation, and salary. Now uh, now you can generate, this the queries with the help of group by in numerous way, right? So let us understand first the simple group by clause and a simple query. Now what I want to do is that I want to have a summation of salary, right? Depending upon my department, right? So each department I would, sum up the salary column for each department. Okay, so when I execute this query, you can see like accounts. Okay, let me show you the query with the simple query as well. Okay, so now you can see here, right? It has actually, grouped all the accounts into one and finance into one. So if you can see here, accounts, this is 45,000, this is 25,000. So how much? 670,000, and this is 10,000. So you can see 80,000, right? And then let me order by its order by, we are saying department. Okay, right. Now let me execute this. So now you can see this 3 into 1 and this 3 into 1, and depending upon that it has given us a aggregated results, right? So group by is generally used for grouping of the rows depending upon the column you specified and doing an aggregation for an integer or a numeric column. Okay, now you can have a group by clause, you can add n number of columns into this group by clause. So now what we are saying, we would see how we can use more than one column. So here now I am doing this on a department and designation. So department wise designation, and first column is department, so first grouping would be done on designation and then on department as a whole, right? Let us see how this shows. Now you can see here my original records, like department wise, designation wise. So accounts executive, and then here you can see accounts executive 20, finance executive 15,000 here, right? And then accounts manager, you can see here 25,000. And similarly for again finance manager here 22,000 and so on. Basically, there are no duplicate rows, right, for department and designation. So you can see, the same result set has been generated. Okay, so this is a simple group by clause. Okay, now let us start with the extension. So first extension, we said that a having clause. Okay, what is an having clause? Now, as you have generated these reports, right? Now I want to say that okay, from my aggregated result, right? My aggregated result only show those rows whose salary is greater than 25,000, for example. Right, so how many rows would be generated? Like greater than 25,000, only these two rows. Because from my aggregated results, we can see that there are only two rows, 45,000 and 60,000. Okay, and how do you write that? Until this, the same group by clause, right? Select department, designation, sum of salary, and then grouping on department and designation. But above, on top of this query, and group by clause, we are saying, okay, do this, but having whatever aggregated results are generated, from that aggregated results, just say that whatever my summation of salary, right, whatever sum of salary is generated, show me only those records whose the aggregated results are greater than 25,000. That is, sum of my salary is greater than 25,000. Okay, so when I execute this query, you can see now it is showing me only two records. Okay, let me execute this both at a time. So you can see, so now you can see here only these two records are generated because why? Because we said that okay, with the help of an having clause, from my aggregated results, on show only those rows whose sum of salary is greater than 25,000. And we can see here from my aggregated results that only these two rows has sum of salary greater than 25,000. Okay, if you say, if you will see greater than equal to, if you will specify greater than equal to, then it will generate three records, one for 25,000 also, which is accounts manager. Clear what is an having clause? So this is the first extension. Now, in this result, in this aggregated result, what if I want to have, in the same result set, if I want to have the subtotals and the grand totals showing, for example, the totals for accounts, total for executives, all with all the departments, similarly, total subtotals for department for all designations and so on, and then a grand total. And that's where, comes into the picture the cube and the roll up. Now, cube and the roll up generally does the same thing with a slight difference. We would surely see the difference, right? So, with the help in now with the group by clause, if you specify a column name, right? So first of all, let us see on a simple with a single column, right? If I execute this query, now you can see a department-wise subtotal has been generated. So it's a summation again. So again, see, it has grouped the sum of salary department-wise. So accounts is having 80,000, finance is having 97,000. Let me show you this with my original query. Okay, where is cube? Okay, so this, okay, let us see this together. So now you can see here our original query with group by clause, it actually aggregated the results with department, right? So department and then aggregated salary. Now here the same thing is happening with the cube, right? But an extra row is generated which is called as a subtotal, which is a summation of both these, right? So cube you can use to create a summation of both these. So now if we add one more column, let us see how how the query results are. See, much more results, right? So now what it has done, it has actually given the summation. If you can see each this null line with the department as null. So designation wise total for, right? So for example, for executive, 10,000 and 50,000, 25,000. Similarly for manager, 47,000. If you can see here. Similarly for vice president, 1 lakh 77,000. Sorry, 1 lakh 50,000. Summation of both these two. And then it has also generated department wise totals. So same way as as we were getting here 80,000 and 97,000. So these are department totals, and this is a grand total. If you can say, the grand total of all the rows, all the aggregated result, that is 1,77,000. Got the point? So when you add, keep adding the column names, right? It will generate what it will generate with a cube. It will generate first a subtotal for each column that has been added, that is for department and designation, a subtotals for both, right? And then a grand total. So this is a roll up. Now, this is a cube. Now let us see what does roll up does, right? So if you can see the same query again. So for the column for a single column, a roll up and cube doesn't make much difference, right? It shows the same results. Let me show you again this. Control C and then with a roll up. Okay, so my this query is with cube and this query is with roll up. Okay, now if you execute both of these, you can see it is giving me same results, right? So with a single column, it doesn't make any difference, but with a more columns, roll up and cube would surely make a much difference, right? So let us see this with, you know, cube and roll up with two different columns. So cube and roll up. Okay, let me execute this query. Now just understand, right? In cube, our first query was cube. Here it has actually generated 12 rows, and here in a rollup it has generated only 9 rows, right? So the difference is that in a cube it generates the subtotals in both the directions. That is, for department and designation. Whereas in rollup, it generally don't create a subtotals in both the direction, that is for both the columns, but it will only generate a department wise and it will not generate a subtotals designation wise, because we have specified department first and designation. If we had done this vice versa, that is designation first and department, then it would have generated the rows, the subtotals for only designation and not for the department. So this is the only difference in cube and rollup. That is, in cube it will generate aggregation, the subtotals for both, that is for department and for designation, and then a grand total. But in case of rollup, it will only generate the subtotals for the first column, that is department. You can see here for the department it has generated the totals and then a grand total. Got a point? So this is the difference. And now you can see for the roll up, like accounts. So this is in total for an accounts. Sorry, this is in total for an account for all the designation. This is a total for a finance for all the designation, and this is a grand total. So now let us see if we alter the column right here. Okay, let me have the query written again with the designation as first. Control X and you can see control right, and then okay, let us execute this query. See, got the point? So now, okay, why if you are having if you are having a problem in understanding this query, whenever you say here, what we have done is here we have kept a designation first. So just alter this, put this column on the top so that it would be easy to understand the query. So now here in rollup we have used department as the first column, and in this case we have used designation as the first column. Okay, now let us execute, and now you will be clearly able to identify or understand this. So now when department was specified as first column, it generated the results for department, subtotals for the department you can see here, and the grand total. And here it actually generated the subtotals for what, the designation, all the designation, and then a grand total. Now grand total remains the same, that is 1,77,000. Okay, understood the difference between the roll-up and cube, and why these roll-up and cubes are basically used. So to create a report like of, a report type of data from the query itself, that is creating your subtotals and grand totals. Okay, now if you want to identify, there is one more clause called as a grouping ID. So if you want to identify, the groups basically, then you can use this grouping ID. Let me execute this query and to show you. So what happens with the grouping ID? If you can see with the roll up, we have used designation, right? First, and then department second. Sorry, this is my, so here we have used designation first and department second. So let me get this so that column, on the top so that it would be easy to understand. Okay. Now let me execute this query for you with grouping ID. Okay, so what does grouping ID see? This is the subtotals for my designation, that is executive. This is for manager and this is for vice president. Okay, so now you can see whenever these subtotals are generated, the grouping ID is changed to one. It is, it is displayed one for all subtotals. So from this, you can, whenever further, if you want to work on this data, then you can identify, okay, if the grouping ID is one, which means that is a subtotal for whatever column has been specified. Here we have specified designation. And similarly for the grand total, it is showing as 3. Okay. So now depending upon this, what you can do is again, you can actually fill up these null values. Okay, you can actually fill up these null values. So what how you can do is now here I have written a case statement that if my grouping ID is 0, then show the department name. Okay, but if my grouping ID is 1, so here then we can say it's a designation wise total. And else, so if my grouping ID is not 1, then it should be a grand total. Okay, when I execute this, now you can see, right, on the, it is what it is showing, that this is my designation total. Okay, everywhere where 1 is there, and this is my grand total. Got a point? So grouping ID can be used in this way to fill up those null value. Initially, if I execute this again back, then you can see here, you can see a lot of null values. So, one cannot understand. Or if you want to use this query as a final result for your reports, right? If you want to generate a report from this itself, then you can say like this. So here you can see the designation total, right? Here again a designation total, okay, and here again the designation total. And depending upon the column value, you can in fact add the column name also. That is designation total for executive, designation total for uh, uh, vice president, and so on. Okay, so this was grouping ID. Another concept is of grouping sets. So you can see here grouping sets. Now it does the same thing like roll up and cube, right? But this is the new way of doing it. So when I say grouping sets, let us see, let us understand this. When I execute this query, you can see again the same thing. So what we have in a grouping set, we want to actually specify uh, on what columns you want subtotals, right? So here we have said that department, we want subtotals on department, even we want on a designation also, then a subtotals with designation and department also. And when you say, sorry, when you say within the brackets, nothing means a grand total. Right, so here again the same result. So you can say for executive it has been generated, for manager designation it has generated, for vice president it has generated, and it has generated for accounts and finance also, that is department. Right. So let us see if I omit this part, that is, department and designation within the bracket. Okay, if I omit this part, then how it will look? See, the subtotals for department and designation are removed, and only you can see the grand total here, because we want what we have generated, the grouping for department and designation, and then simply a grand total. Okay, now if we say, let us have one more query so that you can understand clearly with the grouping set. If I say put this, the subtotals of department and designation, but exclude grand total. Okay, so with this, what happens? Okay, I want, okay, sorry, this has been repeated. I want here grouping sets as department, designation, and then the subtotals for both designation and then subtotal for both, but we are actually excluding the grand total, right? So if I execute this, now you can see, right? So it has individually created the subtotal for designation, that is for executive, then this is for manager, this is for vice president, again the subtotals for department also, So for accounts it is this much, finance it is this much. But as we didn't given only brackets, that is a grand total, it has excluded this, and it doesn't generate a grand total. Now as soon as you put this, it will start generating the grand total also. So you can see here, this is my grand total. Right. So this was a grouping set. This is a very, a good concept whenever you want this, aggregation of data to be converted into the, report type of data. Right. Lot of combinations you can create, lot of possibilities are there with the roll-ups and cubes and grouping sets. So, try as much as possible, do as much exercise you can do with, different columns and different parameter passing to this group by clause. But hopefully you will, you might have now have understood at least the basics of what is grouping sets, what is a grouping ID, what is a roll up, and what is the cube, and what is a having clause, which are the extension to this group by clause, right? So again, repeating, do as much as exercise as possible, so to make your, concepts more clear, to understand more on these extensions and group by clause, right? Hope you have enjoyed this and understood this properly. Um, as usual, please subscribe to my channel, and if you like this video, please like it and share it, which will motivate me to create such more videos, which will be helpful to the community and to you as well. Okay, so meet you next time with the next topic. Till then, bye and take care.